What's happening, my beautiful people? My name is Mike LaBelle, and today we're gonna dive in deep and talk about custom tactics and what you can expect when you're playing online, what everything does, kind of an all-inclusive. And I wanted to do this later in the year because the game's changed so much that it's worth addressing at a different time period, because different tactics are more effective now than they were prior in different game plans and so forth and so on. If you guys could take a minute, because it's the best way that I can almost poll you in the comments, what are your offensive custom tactics? What are your defensive custom tactics? This is the easiest way for me to see exactly what everyone's using, so they can attempt to do the abusing. And by no means am I saying the game's in a great place, especially gameplay this year. I feel that everyone is aware that we're having some gameplay flaws, some inconsistencies, the balance isn't right. I made a video last week discussing my gameplay changes. If I had the power, what I would shift, what I would impact. If you haven't watched that, I will link it down below in the description. But in this video, we are focusing on tactics. If you could take a minute to drop a thumbs up if you like the content that I'm putting out. My plan for the remainder of the year is to give you guys 4 uploads throughout the week: a Tuesday, a Thursday, and then a Saturday and Sunday. And I want to keep that on rotation so you guys can get used to almost seeing a show. And I'm going to make those videos more detailed and lengthier. Therefore, you're still getting the same amount of content as if I was uploading daily. I believe that's a good format, or at least that's what we're gonna try, where I'm giving you guys enough content and the quality stays at a certain place, plus the traveling, everything is working together with a nice bit of synergy. On screen, select your game plan. Of course, if you played FIFA 19, then you're well aware that EA introduced the ability to change formations and tactics on the fly. You set up your game plans. They basically eliminated mentalities, and now mentalities are attached to a game plan, or a way of attacking, a way of defending, a mix of both. And that's what we're going to detail. What does everything do? And what's happening in the current state of FIFA 19? What styles can you expect to run up against? And I do want to stress, when you're looking at custom tactics, these are not miracle workers. They're not going to change the way that you necessarily play organically, whatever your natural style is. And that's where I need you to be very honest with yourself. How are you scoring goals? Where do you excel? How would you prefer to play defense? Whether that's extremely aggressive, maybe you're a little more passive, maybe you're somewhere in between. And offensively, are you scoring crosses? Are you looking to play through the middle? Are you trying to have fast build up or slow build up? Let's get everything on track. First major key: if you don't know what you're doing in custom tactics, you have not messed around with these this year, start on balanced. Basically run everything at close to a default. See how that treats you in terms of the spacing. Are your players too far up the pitch? Are they too narrow? Are they too wide? It allows you to make adjustments. And another way to get better at FIFA, or just to understand what you're doing well, or maybe what you're not doing that well, is play a weekend league or play division rivals. Keep stats. It might not be the most enjoyable, but those stats don't lie, and they're going to tell you exactly what you need to see, what you need to hear. We're going to start with defense, and I've played a lot of FIFA this year with balanced as part of my game plan. I've also played a little bit on drop back more recently, which I don't really enjoy that much. And I've played a lot on pressure on heavy touch. But balanced is what it says it is. And you can make this look a little more like a drop back if you were to bring your depth way down, which makes complete sense. I hate when I talk to people and they say, oh, I'm not playing on drop back, but my depth is at 1. And then my width will be extremely spread out, which makes it where you have everybody sitting back, and then you're maybe holding the ball on your offensive approach play just because the width was so wide on your defense that you have those immediate outlets out wide. Makes sense? Logically, you with me? Or you see the complete opposite, where they have no width and no depth, and they're just packing the box. Just to reiterate, the majority of this year I've played on pressure on heavy touch. Online especially, it's a more fun gameplay style, and I typically have my depth even a little bit lower. Width is around the right area, and the reason that I prefer to keep my depth a little bit lower is just because when your players are pressuring, they're going to leave a lot more space in behind, and when you're pressuring on a heavy touch, it's a little more unpredictable versus when you're pressuring after possession loss. That brings us to pressure after possession loss, and I actually think this is a good place to start if you're not maybe ready to play with pressure on heavy touch, because you know when you're going to pressure every single time. You know exactly when your players are going to push forward. You can still overwhelm people, no doubt, but when you start playing better oppositions, this can be a dangerous tactic because they're going to be able to hit that outlet and then they're going to get in behind. There's going to be space for them to work with, or they're going to lob the ball forward. They can start to get used to the sauce that you're applying. Constant pressure. It's funny. This tactic has changed so much throughout the year. Early on, because stamina didn't matter as much, you could play this all game, no problem. However, in the current state of FIFA 19, if you start in constant pressure, it's a huge gamble. Now, if you switch to constant pressure at the very end of a match, which is pretty common, we all do this. I'm talking kind of late though, and you're going to be all in your opposition's grill, but at the same time, they're going to have tons of space. Expect over the top through balls and people to try to hold the ball down the wings. But at that point, you're doing anything to get back in the game. You most likely switch formations as well. Let me run that back. Current state of FIFA, constant pressure. I do not recommend starting a game with this type of setup. Whether you're playing with low depth or high depth, your team's just going to be so shot. However, you need a change of pace. You're losing a match. Maybe you're down a couple goals. Constant pressure can be that haymaker or that Hail Mary, the YOLO defensive system that's necessary, especially if you have the right personnel. We have drop back, which I would say if you're playing the weekend league or division rivals, it's got to be at least 1 out of 4. Maybe 1 out of 3 opponents feel like they're using drop back or some similar form of setup with their tactics in terms of their players just sitting on top of that box and stuffing it. And that's where a lot of the community has spoken out, saying we need consistent finishing, such as FIFA 18 where you had the low drivens, because we're working too hard to get the ball into the box to potentially get AI blocked, or a goalkeeper moves left or he moves right, or you get an unlucky deflection, or you put the ball wide, it hits the post. We can go on and on. Like I said, I already uploaded a video talking a lot more about gameplay, but if you're going to use drop back, I wouldn't go too crazy on the depth. You can bring it down a couple if you wanted to. Width is so preference based, whether you're trying to squeeze that middle or you want to have that additional space. And I like having width even on the defensive end, not just because crosses are effective, but because when you regain possession, your players are already wide, so you have a couple outlets, especially if you're a 4-2-3-1 player. Moving on, we're talking about offense, and I prefer balance this year when I'm going forward. I feel that it actually gives me balance in terms of the runs that are made, the overlapping, the space, all of the above. I do want you guys to make a quick note. Offensively, especially players in the box, if you crank this way up, it's going to impact your spacing dramatically, especially when defending. Let me paint a picture. So you've got all your players committing to get inside the box on the offensive end. When your opponent wins the ball back and he hits an outlet, you've got nobody in the midfield. You're leaving your defenders in no man's zone. There's going to be a lot of space, there are going to be a lot of options, and it makes it where you have to play a lot more 1v1 defense, and you're hoping to get those takeaways because you're not going to have midfield support because you told them to get into the box. Width is pretty self-explanatory. If you watch me play, I whip in crosses, I go down the middle, I use skill moves. It makes sense for me to be somewhere in the middle because I'm going to try to score in a variety of different ways. And this is what I was talking about with being honest about your gameplay. If you're gifted with intricate passing and some of the classic tiki-taka, you might be able to pull this down a little bit because of how you're seeing the game. So let's talk about that. Long ball is an offensive tactic that I'm not a big fan of. Sometimes people try to combine long ball as a form of hitting outlets when they're on drop back, but I don't think it's even the most dangerous combo with drop back. When you see a drop back fast build up, that can be terrifying. When you see all those players running forward and then immediately when they lose the ball, they all run backwards. And like I said, I might not be a fan of that style of gameplay, but it's difficult for me to hate on the player because EA allows it to be a successful way to play FIFA and to win matches. I'll give you an example. FIFA 17, much better skill gap than FIFA 19 or FIFA 18. People AI defended like crazy. They ran back the midfield. A lot of games were low scoring. You had shielding, you had holding the ball, but a couple major keys. We had finishing that was reliable, and also it was difficult to score goals. So you were not going to get counterattacked by random opportunities or YOLO crosses or a lucky corner kick. Your opposition is going to have to build up. So the majority of the time, the better player would win. It just might take you a while to get that opening goal because of how committed your opponent could be to running players back and really crowding that box. Fast build up. Interesting offensive tactic. And I like it sometimes, and if my eyes aren't moving quick enough, it doesn't work for me. Obviously, your players are going to push forward. This is one of those high risk, high reward styles of attacking. You're going to get a lot of players in and around the box. They're going to get there relatively fast, but you have to have the combo play to put that together. And this is what I was talking about with being honest with how you play FIFA Are you gifted with first time passing or looking for those early outlets, or do you need a little bit slower build up? I'm going to use an example. If you watch basketball, you can either play on a fast break or you can play half court basketball, or you could do both. Do you have that balance? And that's a question only you can answer about your gameplay in FIFA, or at least your vision of how you want to play the game. Most commonly for me, if I'm chasing a game, you're going to see a constant pressure, even a pressure on heavy touch, and then I'll combine it with fast build up and I'll rev up players in the box. I'll rev up my depth on the defensive end, much more in your face, and I want to make you feel uncomfortable. I want to make you nervous. I really want to just change the rhythm to the match in hopes of making that comeback or just forcing you into error. Possession, it's kind of a strange tactic for me. I thought I would like this tactic a lot more going into FIFA 19, but I just felt like my offense gets so stale. I don't know if it's too many supportive runs or not enough forward runs, or you have to have the ultimate level of patience. I have a lot of trouble using possession and having a fluid attack. And I'm not sure if you guys share that opinion, but that's where I've been at with possession. Even if you view yourself as a possession player, I would recommend going with balanced. It's going to give you way more options, both if you're passing it backwards, if you're passing it in the midfield, if you're going forward. It just feels much more natural, at least when I'm comparing the two tactics. You often can get possession out of balanced. However, you might not get a balanced game plan if you use possession. It doesn't flip-flop evenly. That's my custom tactics breakdown. If you have questions, please comment below. Also share with me what you're using, what's your setup, what's your width, what's your depth, defensively, offensively, maybe even how you chase a game or how you get back into a match. And also let me know, what formation are you playing? Because if you're playing a 4-1-2-1-2 versus playing a 4-2-3-1, your build-up plans and even your defensive measures might look fairly different between those two formations, because even though they're the most popular formations in FIFA, that doesn't mean that they necessarily parallel. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to drop a thumbs up. I have a lot more coming out for you ASAP, and it is free to subscribe.
Back to business, need my balance, but they don't get it. Looking at me like I'm pathetic. That shit she talk, I'm not interested. I'm interjecting, trying to cut a deal. Give me 2 fucking years to show that this shit is real. I'ma go and make what you make off the music and then see how you feel.